6:32. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Royce Administration Building for the regular meeting, the regular September meeting. It is September, right?
Yeah.
Of the Jessamine County Board of Education. Mr. Moore, will you call the order, please? Or do we have a guest pastor this evening?
I don't think. Do we have a
Oh.
guest?
Yes.
Oh, we
Yes,
do.
we do.
Yes.
Just making
Great.
sure.
Thank you.
There's a dress code, I was told no.
No, you're
Yeah,
fine. You're
yeah.
totally fine.
Appreciate you being here. Yes, thank you very much.
That works. Run the bluegrass. Let's pray. Father, it's good for us to acknowledge you first and foremost before we conduct businesses like this, and it's meaningful. And we thank you that you're a present help in our times of need. And God, there's never been a time like this in our lives where we're discussing very hard things, trying to bring people together across what sometimes seems like impassable bridges, and just to talk and discuss and hear each other out. And so I do ask, Lord, that you would anoint this board and this whole gathering with the spirit of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the fear of God, and the fullness of the Holy Ghost. And Lord, speak in and through each person, give each person ears to hear, and give them just the ability to really lead this district well for the sake of the kids, the students, and the teachers, and everybody, I guess, that's involved. So, Lord, please lead, guide, and direct in every aspect of this evening's proceedings. In Jesus' name we ask it. And everybody said, amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, if you will call the order, please.
Yes, sir. Board Chair Stephen Scrivener.
Here.
Vice Chair Bobby Welsh. Here. Denise Adams.
Here.
Deborah Hood.
Here.
Amy Day. We have 4 present. We have a quorum.
All right. Anybody's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, or are we just on our own?
I'm going to ask Andrew Pickrell to lead us.
All right. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission statement in Jessamine County Schools exists to motivate and challenge every child every day to be a caring, responsible citizen and a high-level thinker, performer, communicator, and learner for life. Let us remember that and help guide our decisions this evening. We've all had a chance to look at the agenda for this evening. Do we have any revisions to it? Did we? Yeah. Are they already on here? I think you got them on here.
Yeah, 3 and 4.
There, okay, yeah, they're already on here. Yep.
Motion to approve agenda.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. All right, we've got 2 meeting minutes to approve. Let's start with the August 23rd, 2021 board meeting minutes. Any revisions needed for that? Okay. We have a
Make a
motion.
motion to approve August 23rd, 2021 board
Second.
meeting minutes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. All right, same thing for the September 3rd special board meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve the September 3rd.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. All right, Mr. Moore.
Yes, we do have a construction update, and I saw Marty here. We felt your presence.
I'm pretty sure everybody else saw my presence too. Thanks, it's always good to be here. Before I report on Rosenwald, just a few quick things. On the action items did get
Yes.
corrected, so you'll be taking action on the final change order for the Career and Tech Ed project, which is a credit this evening. There's a couple of different items in there. The very first one that allows us the opportunity to have a net credit is that when we started the project, the city said that there would be a water tap fee of $25,000. They never assessed that, so that money comes back to the board and offsets the final additional costs we had, a little French drain at West Jessamine High School, and final connections to the welding lab that very oftentimes is done in-house by the district, but it was more efficient. It was determined to have that done through the contract, and so those costs were applied to that credit. And then also, unrelated to the Rosenwald renovation, you're well aware at the previous meeting we approved bids to resurface the track at West Jessamine Middle School. we sat down to have our pre-construction meeting, and our contractor informed us that we were having this meeting on a Tuesday, the Friday before he had learned that he was unable to obtain the binders and resin that bind the rubber and the other components together for that mix until such a late date. He was concerned about the quality of the installation. He said it's just too risky. The weather's going to turn cold, so the recommendation is just to wait until after the spring meet, and we will begin that work immediately as soon as school is out and have it finished before school starts for the 22 season. So on to Rosenwall quickly. It's been a real productive last 30 days. You can see that they've begun replacing the existing roof system, and with that process we are increasing the insulation value to make the building even more energy efficient. We also had a mock-up of the teacher desk in the upper right-hand corner. You can see that, and teachers had a chance to come look at that, evaluate it, and we actually have switched the location of drawer pedestals and made some modifications based on teachers' input, so we're feeling really good about that. The equipment platform at the last meeting, the steel was still being installed, concrete hadn't been placed. At this point in time, both of those elements are fully complete, and you can see in the middle left photograph that we have heat pumps installed. On the walls you can see conduit. We have electrical tubs installed, so they're making great progress. These photographs were taken last Wednesday at the end of that 3-day rainy day period, so the well field was still a little muddy, but the great news is that they have finished all of the underground piping. So during October, which is a perfect time to be doing fall planting, we'll see that cleaned up and seeded and strawed and reestablishing the turf. So yeah, we're making great progress. Any questions? Thank you.
Anybody else on the board? Awesome. Thanks, Margie.
Thank you.
All right.
I was just going to cover two topics. The first one, just to make you aware, when we approved the salary schedule, I gave you the breakdown of those by the different categories, but if you actually want to see it in its full breakdown, that's included under Superintendent's Report F, revised salary schedule. It's also already posted on our website, but again, I just want to make sure, because when you guys had approved that, we didn't have it broken down by every single category at that point. The other thing that I wanted to do is just give you a brief update on some data related to COVID. I do want to communicate that you're going to be getting much more specific details on this, but we did review our fall iReady data today, and it was more favorable than we had anticipated. They gave us a really nice breakdown of how we compared to other Kentucky school districts, as well as the nation, as well as where we should have been pre-COVID in each category of reading and math for kindergarten through 8th grade, and we were pleased with some of that data. Obviously, we identified groups of students that still need to spend time catching up on some of the missed instruction, but it was favorable data. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any plans for use of fall break to help with those students that we've identified through this data?
No, what we've talked about, Denise, we've got the interventions and activities going on during the instructional day right now, as well as special education services. We're talking about some of the after-school programs that we would keep going throughout the school year, and then where we are planning on utilizing a lot of additional funds is with our summer school program. And I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of a highlight on this. When you compared our data to other Kentucky school districts, our students made gains throughout the summer. So when you looked at their data at the end of the school year and at the beginning of this school year, it was exciting to see that. And we had over 1,000 students participating in that. Lori Holland was the organizer of that program. She's sitting in the back, and today we really got validation that what we did was impactful. Yeah, I think it surprised the iReady people to see our data jump like that because it wasn't occurring with other school districts.
We didn't have a summer slide like we typically
Yeah.
do even in normal
Yeah.
years. And also schools are, Matt mentioned the after school, we are continuing the After School Grow Academy, or sometimes before, but utilizing the Easter funds for Grow Academy, which is like after school interventions and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's why we're not really utilizing the break, because we're already, schools are
Yeah.
already doing those types of things after school and identifying the students.
And we had already earmarked our ESSER funds, like we have some held in reserve to duplicate a summer program like we did this year for next year. I did want to just share some data with you because I know that you've wanted me to keep you as up to date on this as possible. Last week we had 84 positive cases with our students, and that was up from 68 the previous week. For quarantines, we had 225 that had to quarantine, and that is down considerably from the previous week of 319. We feel like a lot of that has to do with our approach on how we are identifying students that need to quarantine, as well as our test to stay model. Through the test to stay model that has been in implementation, today made day 7, but I've got 6 days of data for you. We had 264 students go through that program, and 10 of those students tested positive. Also, from the contact tracing, we had identified an additional 3 students that had tested positive. So from our test to stay model and the contact tracing approach that we have that's leading to quarantines, 6% of those students last week actually tested positive. And then from our staff, we had 15 staff members that either were positive or had to quarantine last week, which is up from 10. And really, if you look at the overall county data, while the school district data didn't reduce as significantly as the county, I feel pretty confident that we're going to see that because the Jessamine County community data for last week had 284 cases during that week, and that was down considerably. The week before it was 470. So just looking at today's data, it is significantly less than what we were looking at the past 2 weeks on the Monday coming back. It seemed like we were getting really large numbers, which was making it a pretty big struggle to identify all of those students on the first day.
And to add on to that, we had, prior to last week's numbers, which we got today, we had 4 consecutive weeks in Jessamine County that set record highs during the pandemic. So the 4 previous weeks to last week had gone up, 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 and had been our 4 highest weeks. So it was really encouraging to look at the data this morning and see that it not only did not continue going up, but came down significantly. So fingers crossed that trend maybe goes 2 weeks in a row next Monday.
It was in the hundreds, but right now the case rate in Jessamine County, it's 75 per the 50,000, which still would put us in the red category if you go back to the mapping system by 3 times the data. But again, it's gone considerably down compared to.
Still red, but maybe not quite as red.
Yes, exactly. And that was everything that I was wanting to communicate. Are there any questions that you have? I will tell you, we've been pleased with the test to stay model. It started with a small number. I think we had 23 on the first day, and it was a combination of students and staff. And what we were hoping we would get from that is exactly what we got, and students being able to return to the classroom more quickly, and our staff being able to get back to work more quickly.
I don't know how difficult, talking about your whole report, Matt, I don't know how difficult this is for your people to do, and I'm not expecting a quick turnaround on this request, but it would be kind of nice to know where this most recent salary increase, where that puts us in the state now in salary. Just concerned about
I'm not exactly sure when they publish all the salaries, but they get collected. I don't know if that's a November timeframe, but I know it's in the next couple months, and we'll definitely do that.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that information, because still very concerned about our inability to attract and hire a lot of minority teachers, and I feel like being nestled right in here between two districts that pay very well makes it difficult when somebody can drive 30 minutes and make a lot more money.
Yeah. And we're planning on sharing that. I actually have that as an agenda item too, and I'll see if we can put that on our next work session, that minority hire piece, because we've put a lot of work into that. We're not pleased with our results, finding definitely some new employees, but I think there's a lot of room to grow there. Yes. That was everything for me.
Any board member communications? I just want to take a second and express gratitude for a resident of Jessamine County. I just learned this recently. Dr. Scotty Day is the physician-in-chief of the Kentucky Children's Hospital at the University of Kentucky. We had reached out to Dr. Day, 4, 5, 6, no, it may not have been that long, but it's definitely been more than a month, and had asked him if he would be interested in coming to our board meeting and sort of serving like an expert witness, for lack of a better word. Just thinking somebody with his impeccable credentials and his exposure to really what's going on in the community with regard to kids and COVID would be a beneficial thing for not only the board to hear, but our community to hear. And in talking to him, we learned he lives in Jessamine County, so it was even more serendipitous. But he started getting so many requests to do that sort of thing that it became impossible to manage, and he couldn't say yes to one school district and no to a dozen others. So this past Friday, Dr. Day did a Facebook Live video, which has since been archived on YouTube, so it's available. Anyone can go watch it. He sat down with Dr. Sean McTighe, who is the chief of pediatric infectious diseases. I can't think of two better people to listen to talk about the topic of COVID in children, and what they're seeing, what's going on. It's only about 35 minutes, so it's an easy watch. But if you go to YouTube and just search children, COVID in Kentucky, those 3 words, it's the second link that pops up, and it's a very good video. It's 2 highly qualified people talking about this issue, and it's full of information. So I encourage everyone to give it a view. But it was nice to see them take the time to do their best to inform the public and kind of cut through some of the things. There's so much information out there, so it was nice to hear 2 experts to talk about this. So any other board member communications? Sure.
I'll tag on to that. I listened to it 2 more times today. I appreciate how at the end of that they really focus on the mental health issues of our youngsters and what they have seen, and their concerns over the increase of youth suicide. Absolutely. Their message is loud and clear that school boards need to be focusing on whatever it takes to keep kids in the school building. And all of the benefits that brings our kids.
Yeah, they were particularly, they really went off on, a good sidebar on the mental health thing and the importance of in-person learning. So yeah, that was good to hear. Any other communications? Okay. So we're to audience communications. Same rules applies always, 5 minutes. I will give a 30-second kind of warning just so that way messages can be wrapped up, but we're going to stick to 5 minutes this evening. As usual as well, this is more of a one-sided conversation. We're here to listen to you. So without further ado, Mr. Swain, we'll start with you, sir.
Swain. My wife Margie and I are both graduates of East Jessamine High School, and we have 3 children who attend West Jessamine Middle and West Jessamine High. We love this community, and while neither my wife nor I are originally from Jessamine County, we chose long ago to make it our home. The social and relational damage that has been done over the subject of COVID-19 is regrettable. Many of us are suffering the effects of strained relationships among our family and friends during these polarizing times. But we don't have to make it as polarizing as we are. There's a simple and clear path for parents, teachers, administrators, and health department officials. For families whose independent research and personal convictions have brought them to the conclusion that wearing a mask is the appropriate action, they should absolutely have the choice to do so. They should be free to make that determination for themselves and their children because they have concluded that masks work. There are also many families in our community who, through similar research and conviction, have determined that masks are ineffective and unsanitary and are a physical barrier to reasonable human interaction. These 2 groups of people deserve equal freedom. Both should have the right to choose for themselves and their families which path to take. If you believe the masks work, wear one. If you don't, then don't. A person should be no more required to put one on than someone else should be required to take theirs off. The school board, Superintendent Moore, and the health department have had difficult jobs in the past several years, these past year and change. And so let us remove some of this unwanted pressure by restoring a family's ability to make the masking decision for themselves. Our founding fathers, who I hope and pray continued to be taught about and revered in our schools for generations to come, had decisions to make that are heavier than any of us can imagine. Their country, their neighbors, and their own lives were at stake when they determined to draft and sign the Declaration of Independence. With everything they knew and loved on the line, they had but one simple answer: freedom. Freedom at that time, freedom for all time. I truly believe that if any of our founders were to visit us today and see us mandating masks and quarantining our children in this free land, they would be horrified and heartbroken. So this is my humble plea, that the school board, superintendent, and health department relieve themselves of this perceived responsibility and return it to its rightful owners, the parents and families of Jessamine County students. Thank you.
Mr. Nickel.
Thank you. See if I can hit this time limit. I'm used to 5, but thanks to having me back tonight. I'm grateful for the Test and Stay program. I really am. It seems to provide the opportunity for more kids to remain in school instead of being quarantined, which is excellent. Tonight I want to ask again, though, the same question I asked last time around, which is simply when. When will we not be testing, quarantining, masking, and devoting so much time, energy, and resources to COVID mitigation? You all freely admit you want that to happen, but to my knowledge, you have not disclosed the measures by which you will make that determination. So my question is, by what standard will you make that judgment? Please disclose precisely the numbers and metrics that you will be looking to as the objective standard to wrap all this up. I corresponded with this entire board on a few occasions. I'm sure you're tired of me. And one curious outcome was that no one seems to know the precise chain of command. I asked each of you who exactly is making you employ all these methods. I received 2 responses saying, basically, I don't know, and I'll try to find out, and one that said the following: I'm certain there are other agencies that will hold us accountable, but the Kentucky Department of Education communicated clearly to superintendents that certifications and funding would be in jeopardy. If the legislators conduct the special called session, which did, I anticipate that the discussion to mask will be given back to the school district. Well, that session was called. The ball is back in your all's court, not only on masking, but on all the mitigation efforts. And so if there are other agencies that are forcing your hand, please, as parents, we'd like to know who they are. My challenge tonight is simple. Please take what Jocko Willink calls extreme ownership. It's a good book if you haven't read it. If you believe the COVID mitigation efforts we're employing in our schools are necessary, please stand up and tell us why. If you think they probably aren't, but you just feel that you simply must do all this, then Please stand up and tell us why you think you have to. If you think they're largely ineffective and in fact detrimental to kids on the whole, please let us know. You're each elected to your position to make policy. And so when making policy for large groups of people, you cannot give way to single factor analysis. You have to take into account multiple factors to make a decision. In other words, you have to assume risk. Each of you are more than comfortable to have hundreds of students loaded into school buses without seatbelts and driven down dangerous roads daily. How did you arrive at that decision? Well, you know the risks. You're just willing to take them. Just last week, a school bus carrying some of the Scott County football team caught fire. I bet they'll ride the bus to the next away game. This is why the impassioned, if it saves only one speech falls on so many deaf ears. If you applied that logic to every situation, we would never leave our homes for any reason ever. Each day you take ownership of students not only riding those buses, but eating food prepared in your facilities that could potentially harm them. You allow students to do backflips, handsprings on the cheerleading team and collide into one another violently on football fields. We've had a couple fires in our facilities recently. Well, why send our kids to buildings that could so easily catch fire, and some actually do? Why not just zoom in forever and each home can be in charge of their own fire extinguishing efforts? That all happens on our watch. Why? Well, because we've assumed the risk and found that the benefit outweighs the risk. Which brings me back to my original question. When and at what point will you see this through the same lenses as you see riding buses and eating food that's mass prepared for children? Please don't offload your responsibility through a catchphrase like, we'll follow the science. Every science teacher in every one of your schools knows the is versus ought distinction. In other words, science at its best can tell us what we think is at the moment. Science can never tell us what we ought to do. The very instant you begin to think, well, what should we do in light of this information, you have stepped outside of the realm of scientific and into the realm of the moral. Science can tell you that you're holding a puppy in your arms. Science cannot tell you whether you should feed it or throw it off a bridge. That's a moral question. You've been given moral authority. Parents have given you a measure of that authority to make decisions. You should absolutely take into account what science is revealing about this virus. You should read broadly and deeply on that topic. That being said, please don't offload your moral authority on the health department or the CDC. Scotty's a friend of mine, by the way. Physicians are not policymakers. Their job is to tell you what is healthy and what isn't. Then you have to take that information, make a decision about how to live. Bottom line challenge I have for tonight is this. Full and total transparency is your only way forward. Tell us what the goal is. Tell us what you'll do and what you won't do, when you'll hit it and when you won't. Tell us where you're getting your information. Tell us who you're accountable to. Regardless, I'm almost done, of the agencies might hold you accountable, school board is ultimately accountable to parents. Can I just give you the last two sentences? No? Oh, appreciate your time. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Turner? How you doing, sir?
John Travis Turner. I've lived in this community about three and a half years now. The reason we moved here, the main reason is because my eldest was in a terrible school district. He was not learning properly. He was being treated poorly by the staff and everything. I was a UPS driver at the time. I delivered to every school here. I fell in love with this community through that, and I have been pleased with this school district and everything since we've moved here, up till COVID. As I said, I was a UPS, but I'm also a Navy corpsman with the United States Reserve. For people that do not know, corpsman is in the medical field. I supply medical treatment for Marines and sailors. Since I began my training, we have been told that the use of a mask is only for droplet protection. As we know, this is a viral infection. These masks do not work. They do not protect anybody. So, that is my feelings on it with my education. Now, I do not want to force my feelings and my education on anybody. I feel that we should have the freedom of choice for masks. I should be able to provide my child with the option. If they are older or younger and they get older, they can choose to wear a mask themselves. I promote self-growth in our youth. Now, the thing is, you all do have the responsibility to make sure everybody is safe. I do take that into consideration when I'm making these statements. What I ask is that you listen to the people that elected you into these positions. Now, as you can see, there's a large number of adults here tonight asking for this for their children. I will continue to ask this for our children because that is our job as parents. And until everybody has the right to choose, we will not stop. So I'm not making threats. I'm not making promises, nothing like that. I will just continue to, like I said, I joined the United States Navy. I took an oath to protect and serve the Constitution. My child's constitutional rights are being stepped on. I will voice my opinion, and I promise you that, because I love my children, I love the children of this community, and we will keep pushing. So thank you all. You have a good night.
All right, Mr. Sims.
This is not high tech. My printer stopped printing. Matt, am I at liberty to share the response you gave to me? I thought that would be possible. Last time I presented some concerns about CRT in the curriculum. Mr. Scribner addressed that very directly and quickly. I also had concerns about biological males posing as trans, participating in girls' sports. Mr. Downing directed me to the State High School Athletic Association, which has very stringent policies regarding that. There were two additional issues I was concerned about. One was biological males using girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. Matt was kind enough to respond to that with me. Let me read what he said. We do not have a policy addressing the concern regarding restroom facilities. At the advice of KSBA and Mr. Downing, we have managed these situations through our practices and not through policy. If a biological male requests to use a female restroom, we do not grant this permission, but allow him to use a single stall or separate restroom separate from other students. This is typically a staff restroom. Please know that we will never allow both sexes to use the same facility at the same time. The other consideration, which is happening around the country, and you're aware of it, is the introduction of gender discovery at the very early elementary levels, whereby it is proposed that gender is something different from biological sex. Now, this may sound far-fetched to the common sense person, but the Mayo Clinic sort of, if you look on their website, sort of supports this, that gender and biological sex are very separate things. Not sure how they got there, but that is the science from Mayo Clinic. The current concern I've got tonight, and Matt did address that as well. He says, we do have policies that require teachers to only teach the approved SBDM content. They cannot deviate from this content, and the topics you've mentioned, which had to do with gender discovery, are not a part of the JCS approved instruction. My question to you, and it's a point of information, if Frankfurt were to adopt curriculum standards that included CRT or gender discovery in their curriculum guidelines, I'm not sure if you have any options or recourse to respond to that. And it's just a question to you to see if there's any, if you can inform us as the public what position you're in that situation. If curriculum standards come down requiring CRT to be a part of the goals, and curriculum standards you all are probably aware of are the things that teachers are supposed to teach to, is my understanding, content that helps kids to be able to answer questions on state tests that support that curriculum and give them the outcomes that they want, upon which schools are sort of assessed and graded. Is there a way that the board has to respond to those types of things should they come down? And it may be far-fetched, but it's happening elsewhere. Can that be asked of you or not?
Each state adopts their own standards. Each state adopts their own set of standards. And then there is a process to do any changes to those standards, which is about an 18-month process at a minimum, which requires public comment and input and feedback. So part of our recourse would be, if there was something that we were not okay with, would be to interject into that.
Did you call me back today?
I did.
Well, it sounded like the same answer I got on the phone. The other question. You mentioned SBDM content. I think that's school-based decision-making councils. And from your answer, it seems like councils at a local school would not be free to add this type of instruction in the curriculum. And I guess if a council did elect to do that the board has some way of addressing that to the site-based council? Okay. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate all those who've responded to me about these concerns. You've been very gracious about that. And I appreciate the support that you provide to our district and to our students and to our families. Thanks so much.
All right, we are into the consent agenda this evening. We have got 28 items on here. I know we've had an opportunity in our work session to kind of go through some of these.
Can I make a couple?
Please,
comments?
Matt, go ahead.
We did get the Copia grant again from the Providence School. For the Providence School, they've been great supporters. This has probably been 15 years, safe to say, $25,000, which greatly appreciate. We also had the Duke family provide us with single container hand sanitizers, which came to the tune of $3,225. And then we received a PTO donation of $5,000. And I'm holding off on the best one here, 24. So if you recall, we did not receive the McKinney-Vento grant. Well, Shaney went after another grant for our homeless students, and we had to apply for this. As like all of these, it was a very short window, so the agenda item is doing nothing more than asking your guys' permission for us to file this grant, but know that we did send it in because of the timeline, and we received that. So that's $250,000 that is going to help support that program. So that was a.
What was the McKinney-Vento?
It actually paid her salary, right? though?
It did.
It's the
Yes.
homeless grant.
Paid for her position.
Yes.
But
So
we can reapply for that in what, 2 years or something?
yeah, it's a 3-year grant. Exactly.
Are you
So
on
this is
McKinney-Vento
2
now, or
years.
are you talking about this American?
McKinney-Vento.
Okay, yeah.
So this one is a 2-year grant, and this actually is going to allow her. This is going to cover some of her salary as well as a support person to help her target some additional students. So we were really excited about that.
Timeframe, oh, okay, it's through 23.
Yes.
How does this grant amount compare to the McKinney-Vento?
Oh, you're going to ask me that. I think it might be a little bit less, but this is over 2 years. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's
and
very
it's 2-year,
comparable.
where the McKinney-Vento's 3 years.
Yes.
So it's actually a better grant. Is it more competitive?
I would hate to say that for certain without
Okay,
seeing
okay.
Shaney comment on that,
Gotcha.
but it definitely has supported in a much better way some of our immediate needs. I think that we are covering maybe a little bit more right now due to not getting the McKinney-Vento, but we're utilizing our federal dollars to support that as well.
Please convey our grant to
Yeah, very excited.
Shane.
Yeah.
May I ask a question about KEXAC? KEXAC now is we've got a KEXAC grant at the Methodist Home and at Providence. It's funding 2 different programs in the same district.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Been that way for the last 2 years.
Yeah,
Since we've started.
That's a change in KEXAC.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because of it's the Methodist home and being a residential, but they allowed us to target 2 different populations of students
Good.
that typically wouldn't overlap.
Yeah.
Denise, Jason said that approximately McKinney-Vento is approximately 80,000, maybe a little over
Per year.
$80,000 a year. So 240,000 over 3 years.
Over
So
3
this is
years.
actually-
Just a little bit more.
This is
than
actually
Kenny-Vento.
would be more than that, but over
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, very much.
All right. Any other questions or comments on consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, Mr. Moore, item G1.
So G1, we talked about this in the work session some, and this is truly just to approve the requirement that in order to access these additional days that the individuals be willing to work virtually if they can, or that they be willing to do the test to stay. I know that there's interest in carrying on additional discussions about those that are unvaccinated, but it would be my recommendation now to go ahead and approve this, because then we can encourage that test to stay model so that those that have tested positive or quarantined can return or quarantine can return more quickly.
So if we were to approve this tonight, Matt, there would be a revisit to the whole question of
This is the resolution that does two things. It for those that are able to work virtually, it gives us the ability to do that. And then also for those that are quarantined, that have been vaccinated, it gives us the ability, if they're going to access these emergency days, to do the test to stay model.
which would then, and the advantage to us and to kids, the
Yes.
advantage to kids in doing that is that we have their teacher and their bus driver and food service and instructional assistant, secretary, anybody in the building working with them quicker than what we've had in the past.
Yes.
As
And-
an employer, we're paying, if they have to stay home and work from home, we're paying the vaccinated people and not the unvaccinated people. Is that a true statement?
So this is already occurring. That's already the case with this, because that was the bill that was passed by the Kentucky School Board. So that's already occurring. This resolution would give us the ability to try to get them to transition back more quickly.
It's like I said earlier. A lot of people in the community, as I've talked to them over the last 18 months, it's easy for them to see the impact on kids being quarantined and kids being sick. Very few, if any, people give thought to the operational challenges that go on with conducting school in Jessamine County every day. You know, they don't think about when there's no food service workers, how do you have lunch? When there's no bus drivers, how do you get kids to school? When there's no teachers, how do you teach? You know, they just think, well, once you open the doors, school happens. I'm in favor of this from the standpoint, it keeps our staff and our teachers, it gets them back in the buildings quicker and mitigates those efforts. I think it's a good idea to give our administrative team here more weapons in the arsenal to make sure our buildings stay open. And I mean, I understand Bobby's concerns. I totally get where he's coming from.
I mean, if it makes no difference anyway, then
What do you mean?
Yeah,
so they're saying it's already a state issue anyway, that they're already gonna,
That's-
people that
I
are
didn't
vaccinated are already
realize
gonna be
that.
paid just to work from home, and people that are unvaccinated are gonna be unpaid.
I will tell you, if we are able, so I'm glad you said that, if we are able for people that are unvaccinated, if they're told they have to quarantine and we're able to utilize them at home, then we're still gonna keep them there.
Still paying them.
That's what I wanted added to.
Yeah.
That's why we tabled this
Uh-huh.
resolution last
Yeah.
time, because
But-
we wanted to make sure we were giving the same opportunity
To
to
everybody.
unvaccinated people,
Yeah.
instead of trying to bully everybody into getting a vaccine.
Yeah.
So I think that was our.
Yes.
It was out.
So if it is for the virtual piece, yeah, but I also know that, this has been viewed by the Kentucky School Board as the fact that, a lot of people that are vaccinated weren't necessarily excited about it, but they were willing to do it. So it was,
Right.
if you're willing to do this and willing to go through these steps, just like anyone else could, then we want to consider giving you benefits to being willing to do this.
When you
And
say
then-
do this, the this
Vaccinate.
and that is
To
being
vaccinate,
vaccinated.
yeah. And then also, I don't want to forget to say this, if we have individuals that can't vaccinate for some medical reason, then we also would apply these emergency days to support them.
Does religious objection count?
Yes, and I know that there's very strict guidelines for
Guidelines on
that.
that? And if I'm right, from last month to this month, some changes that have happened. A month ago, am I right? Is my understanding right? When I understood a month ago that if you had natural immunity because you'd had COVID, that this wasn't going to,
Right.
and so that's one
Yeah,
change.
we added that, and then we added the test to stay.
Test to
Before,
stay.
we were just, the only other tool that we had was on the 5th day, you could go in and test
Gotcha.
between the 5th and 7th day and potentially return to work on the 8th.
And-
So,
and-
so it gives us that ability.
Okay.
And you'll see in number 3, it says the employee shall be part of test to stay. It's not an option, it requires
Yeah.
them to do that, so that
So even if they're vaccinated, they have to concede to do the test to stay.
they
Yes.
want.
If they want,
The access those additional emergency days.
yeah.
I think
For me,
totally
that's
fair.
a little
It's
more,
supposed to go any, I'm just gonna go home for 10 days, call me then, you know.
yeah.
Not that I'm saying people would do that, but
Well,
my
people
wife
do
had
that.
COVID and she had a 10-day
People do that.
vacation.
Yeah.
Mr. Downing, is there any legal concerns for us as a board in implementing this from somebody who decides not to be vaccinated, who has to end up using all their sick time for a quarantine? Do we have any legal challenges that you need to make us aware of?
I'm not aware of any. I think that it's subject to challenge. I'm not aware of any challenge that's taken.
And that would happen at the state level, I assume, anyway, right?
It could happen to the state and local districts as well, potentially, but I'm not aware of any litigation at this point.
Any more
I
questions?
think it's a health issue that is based on attempt to try to protect the school system and
This is a tough one for me because my very first reaction was I don't want to be a part of strong-arming people into taking something that on some moral basis they've decided not to do for themselves.
Right.
And, you know, I don't know the degree to which it's a strong moral decision, but somehow morally within themselves, they've come to the conclusion that they don't want to be vaccinated. And so I felt pretty strongly last month about that. I feel better about it with the changes, the test to stay. I feel better about it now that we're at least including people who've been positive, and so we're recognizing the fact that there's natural immunity. I feel better about it. I don't know if better about it, but I understand the fact that ultimately what we need to be concerned about as a board is having people in the building teaching our children. I'm still kind of concerned about the divisiveness that it's going to bring, although I think Mr. Swain talked about the divisiveness that's already present in our community. I don't know that as a board, sometimes I think we have to set aside the fact that we're going to get people who disagree with us, and we have to make the best decision we can. But I feel better about it this month, but I feel like I just need to go ahead and say there's still an element to it that bothers me, and I don't know that there's anything we can do about that in these times
And Denise,
where there aren't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
That's
you off.
okay.
I echo everything you're saying, but I think the one statement that I kind of distilled it down to is this helps our schools, this helps our staff, you know,
This helps our kids.
this helps our kids. You know, I mean, let's face it, Matt's had to send out how many communications during the first 6 weeks of school. Bus routes are messed up, buses are running late, this is happening, you know, scrambling. Jason's probably taught a class or two by now. You know, it's tough. So I totally agree, and I'm glad you voiced the concerns you did, because I think those are valid. So, yeah. Any other comments or questions? All right.
On the fence with it, I really am. I sit on the fence with it as well. I mean,
Make a motion to table. Talk about it more.
I think so. Second. I think so, yeah.
Before we decide to do that, let me ask this, just to cover the base. Is there any time sensitivity with us on this? Do we have the ability?
So what that means is, if we table it again, people that are vaccinated get 10 days off, and we can't require them to test to stay. Does that make sense? So by not voting on it, what you're doing is lengthening it for those that are vaccinated, and it's no option for the unvaccinated. So it almost feels like you're doing maybe the opposite of what you're wanting to do. And you can always change something down the road, but I think the advantage of this resolution is that we're
We just need to set it for our next work session to work this verbiage in so that people that aren't vaccinated get this same opportunity that the state has laid out for the vaccinated, so that we're not giving a benefit to somebody for getting a vaccine. Because then it's just, you're just strong arming everybody into no free will for themselves.
Can we have a report at each work session, Matt, on the numbers of teachers? And I guess for me, what I thought about this all day. What it's come down to for me is I want the hired and trained individual who's supposed to be working with those children that day in the classroom, on the bus, in the cafeteria, as much as possible. And that's my highest priority. Can we get some kind of a report on whether or not this resolution has improved?
Doing what it's intended to do.
Is it doing what it intended to do? Pardon me?
We would have to. I mean, anyone that was quarantined would have to do the test to stay unless they all tested positive, which is.
Yeah.
It's going to get those people back quicker. So let me make sure I'm hearing. Do you all want to go ahead and consider this for approval now? Further discussion at the next work session, and if we need to tweak anything or make any changes, we could roll that into the next month's board meeting.
I can live with that.
Okay. Is that, Bobby? Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not good with it, but
Okay. Well, maybe good with it's
I don't
not.
like it no matter what.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll make a motion to approve item G1. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. All right.
The next one really is creating a job description, so we have a broader range of employee opportunities for the Providence School. This isn't adding a new position. It is an either-or, assistant principal or a coordinator, coordinator 6 position specifically for alternative schools only. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Michelle?
It just gives us some flexibility. It still requires someone with a master's degree, and that would help with managing all the grants and the different programs that go along with an alternative school. Gives us some flexibility for that.
But no new position, just.
Is that an open position right now?
No, it's not. Mr. Turner's in that position, Sylvester Turner. No. We're not letting.
We should hope not.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, we're not letting.
All right.
So it is my recommendation that you approve the coordinator 6 position for alternative schools as described.
G2.
All right. I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. All right.
The next one is our work budget for fiscal year 21-22. I'll let Jason talk about this, and just know that we only, like, this is a plan that is approved based on our practices and everything that we did the previous year. He can talk about anything that may be unique about this one.
Yeah, so you guys already approved the tentative budget for this year, and so the only changes in here are adjustments to our beginning balances based off of the ending balances from last year. The tax levy that we placed a few weeks ago, and then all of the salary adjustments for the mid-year raise. Fred keeps moving right in your way. So there's really only 3 changes that were made in here. The mid-year raise was a fun one to navigate. But other than that, there's a $4.5 million contingency, and $4.5 million, and which is $2 million. Because we're roughly right around $100 million, which would be 2% of our total fund balance. And then if you take out the on behalf that the state pays for us, we're at roughly 5%. But there's really not a ton of changes other than the raises and the beginning balance increase.
All right. Any questions? All right. Do we have a motion? Excuse me.
Working budget for fiscal year 2021, 2022.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Yes, ma'am. All right.
The next one is the revision to the school calendar, and this would change the November 2nd date from a in-person instructional day to a work day for staff, and that day would not be made up by students. So it is my recommendation that you approve this calendar, and know that this doesn't have to go to KDE for approval. If you guys approve it, it's official.
Make a motion to approve G4.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right. So that concludes the action items.
The two additions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll go ahead and apologize for the late additions. It's completely my fault.
These
not
were
on
the
the
two
copy
that
either.
Margie spoke about. The first one was the CTE change order number 16.
Yeah, it's just not on my copy.
The other on the track.
Oh, I've got the wrong copy.
No, you've got electronic.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
So it is the addition and renovations that the contractor had identified and Margie had spoken of for change order 16, and it is in the sum of $8,583.28, and that's my recommendation that you approve this change order.
Motion to approve G5.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
G6.
G6.
And the final was the West Jessamine High School track resurfacing, and this has to do with what Margie had identified, just the material availability and doing that during the winter months and it potentially not sealing appropriately. So it is my request that we resurface this at a later date, starting June 2nd, and have the substantial completion targeted for July 25th, 2022.
Motion to approve G6.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I will say with that one, I know it's kind of your project, but when we get a little closer to that, I mean, we're having, in my industry, we're having a terrible time trying to get those type of resins. So when we get a little closer, if we have to push that out past to this time next year, then I'd rather wait and not try to gamble on that. And if we have to push it, we have to push it.
Well, so there was gonna be a gamble. We could have tried to do it, but we talked with both the track coaches and the ADs on this one, and they didn't want to risk us ripping it up because he did say there was an 8 to 12 week window, but he was afraid it'd get too cold. So that's why we're pushing it off so he can go ahead and order it and have it ready to go the second the season's over. And then, sorry to interrupt, there are 2 more change orders that you may not have copies that are on the electronic. I don't know if Teresa got those to you or not. So essentially what these ones are, and I don't know if you have it, Matt. It's basically a wash. One is a change order to, you have them? I'll let you read it then.
It is Rosenwald Dunbar renovation and additional contractor change order number 2, and it's to decrease the construction sum in the amount of $33,656.
So this will be item G7.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to approve item G7.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right.
G8.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we have any more?
Yeah, and you're gonna see that this one
Where, Teresa, I
partners
don't see
with.
this anywhere. Can you?
It's going in your attachment.
No.
And this is, again, for Rosenwald Dunbar, and it's additional DPO change order number 2. And this is to increase the direct purchase sum in the amount of $33,994.80. Jason, do you want to explain the two, how they?
I found it, Teresa.
So essentially it's a wash. It's a decrease to the main contract with Wilburn, and then it's an addition to the individual contractors through the direct purchase order, so that way we can save on sales tax. And then Margie had gone over that there's an increase of $338 within that for soft soils that were discovered. So that's the only difference between those. And again, this is why I'm apologizing, because I knew that I had 4 late ads. So, yeah.
Motion to approve G8.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, there is no G9, correct?
No.
Yeah. All right, we've got executive session for the purpose of preliminary discussions about the evaluation of the superintendent under KRS 618101F and KRS 156-557-4D. Do we have a motion to go into executive session? I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And we are in closed session at 7:32. Let's go back to this one.